All right, so welcome back. We are doing the song No More by Big Daddy and the Blue Notes. We are moving on to the drums. Let's show you what we got. This will be just with all the plugins and processing turned off, just a fader mix, and we'll go from there. Okay, that's with this drum folder soloed, which includes all these blue drum tracks, and then I've got this kick snare going on here. That is something where I'm doing like really heavy compression and some distortion. Actually, not super heavy compression, but this is just sort of add a lot more oomph to those two drums right there. And yeah, so I work instead of buses nowadays on Pro Tools. I work mostly in folders, which basically work like your groups, your bus folders, or would in other programs, and just makes life really, really easy because you can collapse your mix down and open it back up, and then you can assign DCAs as needed, or VCAs, depending on your nomenclature, and makes life easy. But, all right, so on to first, we'll go through the kick, snare, and overheads. So we're going to solo those right now. I'm going to leave this unsoloed because that's a dupe track, which means it's just going to be running a sample. So, kick, snare, and overheads. I was, at the time I did not have a good room mic, or any room mic really, so we ended up not with one in this recording. Anyway, here's what we had with this. All right, moving on to the kick drum. As you can tell, you can hear a lot of what's going on around. I ended up using Drumagog, just an old drum replacement software. Not sure how many guys still use it. I should probably update, but I haven't. And it's running just a simple kick drum from another recording. So here's the kick. All right, here is with the drum replacement that I ended up having, the first one. So it's just a single sample. I'm not really eloquent in my in my drum samples too often. I just have dynamics tracking just cranked way down, so it's very, very consistent. Some guys will use like an L2 or something to level it all out and get rid of all dynamics whatsoever, but it does simplify things. All right, and then I had an American Class A. So no gate turned on. I'll just turn this on. You'll see me I've been using Softube a ton lately. I have the entire console one set up in front of me. I love the drive function in a lot of Softube channel strips. This is the American Class A, and you can guess by the color scheme what it's modeled after. And I'm doing all the processing on this kick drum in here. So drive, I typically stick with the drive on this thing about 4 or 5, but let me show you. So high pass, low pass filtering turned on. So let me just show you without. So that's just the sample. And let me just turn this bypass off. This will be with just the drive and the high pass, low pass in place. So let me show you why I like this thing so much. Drive character in the negatives is a little more low-end focused. When you go into positives, a little more high-end focus. Obviously, kick drum, keep it a little lower. But let me show you what this sounds like. So, vanilla. Crank it up. It just changes the tonality of the kick drum ever so slightly. Not so slightly, but I placed about right here. Now here's where it gets fun, your transient shaping with the sustain and the punch. So let me turn this on, and punch it 10, so it's got a lot more punch to it. So here we go, without. with. It just sounds like the beater's now right in front of your face, which is marvelous. Probably a little more rock and roll than I need, but I like this. Like there's not a ton of high end. I probably added more I left more high end than I probably should have with this mix. Just a nice little, thuddy, bluesy kick drum. So let me show you. I'm gonna move this over so I don't ruin anything. Okay. Let me show you what happens with this punch. Let me crank this. Here's more than I end up with. And now it just sounds completely like a sample, but can really add a lot of attack on there, or a lot of punch, I think is the term. Let me show you the sustain. It just goes right after the attack. Nice little boom. Fun to play with on toms and snare drum every now and then. I'm actually trying to leave that on a little bit. And here's what happens when you go in the negatives. So you can have a lot of fun with this. All right, with the EQ, so I basically gave it a, what's that? A bell boost at 50. -9, okay. And 2. All right, so there. A boost at 50 hertz. A little more low end. Turn that off. All right, and then at 240, which is just where sort of your low end mud frequency comes in a lot of times, at -9. See how that just gave a lot more definition to it? Here. Get it on. And same thing, 800 hertz, also 90, or -9. Much more usable kick drum, and then a little bit of boost to 5K, which I probably shouldn't have done, but and that's how we ended up with this kick. Then we add some compression. What ratio did I use? 2:1. So 15 milliseconds on the attack, which is actually fairly, that's okay. Sometimes I'll speed it up to about 10, maybe if I really want to clamp down at 3 milliseconds, but that's fine. And that just adds a nice little bit of control to the dynamics, adds a nice little bit of punch to that kick. Which turned out great. And then on this other kick sample, we'll add this in here. So here's the original again. All right, we're going to activate this, and this is an old Wendell sample. We actually sampled the drum machine itself, which is crazy, but this is old. I got this like 12, 15 years ago. So very sampling, but it's fun to mix in with the kick drum. So let's fire these in. So here's that. Let's bring some overheads in so we can listen to that. So that's how we ended up with that kick drum. Turned out great. I was happy with it. Now let me show you something that, let's do this live. I'm going to get rid of Drumagog. All right, so we're going to start from scratch. This is something a little new. I'm going to show you a fun little trick not trick, but we're actually going to go through and shape this without just any presets. I'm just going to show you where my brain works on this. So, hit play. So pretend that this is the kick that we have to use, all right? Listen for a second. You can see right here that the fundamental bounces, what is it, 20, 30, 40, so right around 50 hertz. One trick if you want to figure out where exactly your fundamental is, if you have EQ, an REQ, an F6, actually does the REQs do it? Yeah, even the Renaissance EQ does it. So as you can see, I can just hover over frequencies, and then up in the upper left corner of the RTA window and your EQ graphic is a frequency readout. So a lot of plugins will do this. They'll have some type of RTA in a plugin, and you can sometimes just really get a feel for where that is. So we're just going to get rid of this. Don't need it. All right. And then what I'll do sometimes is pop down here, type down the fundamental in my notes so I know where that is without having to go research again. All right. Now, we're just going to go through this plugin and show you why I like it so much, because it is a very useful little channel strip. Here we go. So first thing I'm going to do, bring this high pass. So it's a very, very, wide sweeping high pass that I cannot adjust. It's like 6 decibels per octave or something like that. So you just want to cut the edge off the low end that you're not going to be using. And same thing, you don't need, oh, that was too much. Like, you don't need a lot above 12K. Like, you can see that the mic just isn't doing much over there. So do it. Clear out some space for some air for some other stuff. It's not the end of the world if you don't do anything with that, but I'm not going to play with the phase. But you do have phase invert on here. You can also filters to compressor, which is fun. I haven't used that yet. Input gain. So if you want to drive your compressor a little harder, or if your input isn't as hot as you wanted where you recorded, you can do that there instead of clip gain. All right, so we're going to play with the gate on here. You can actually hear the vocal somewhere in the mic, which is crazy. Anyway, gate. Good. So this has two. This gate has 2 parameters on it as a gate. So gate release, which is how fast it releases. So clamps back down, and then where the threshold is. So what I'm going to do, slow that down, speed that up a little bit. Basically, I want it to start jumping in, but I don't want to cut it to cut the tail off the kick too much. I'm going to bring up the gate. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to find that threshold where it's getting the kick, but not the tom that's going on. I think one of the reasons I ended up using a sample is because I was having trouble with that. But all right, that's about as good as that's going to get for now. All right, now I'm going to play with the fundamental. We know that's going to be at 50. Put that in a bell curve right here. That's as much as I'm going to do for now. I'm actually going to play with these frequencies first. So you hear that? Just nasty. Sometimes just find the frequencies you want to cut are as easy as boosting and sweeping. So we're actually going to do this at 180. And so one rule, especially with just fully parametric EQs, is always do your cuts first. With some of these older style EQs, you're going to be doing more of a combination of boosting and cutting because you can't really narrow your bell curve. So obviously, we'll say for now, this feels like a pretty good cut instead of the 240 I was doing with the other sample I was working with, because I am trying to get rid of that gunk right above the fundamental. But obviously I'm losing some of my fundamentals, so that's why I stuck this bell curve here. Boost that a little bit. Great, and now I'm going to move this down to 800 hertz. That's for your low mids. Sounds like you're talking through a towel, typically around 600 to 800 hertz. I can't do 600 on this one. I'm already using this band at 180, so 800 it is. Let's see what it does for us. That's disgusting. All right. I think I like it better at 240. So this is what I mean about just making adjustments as you go along. All right, we're going to keep this bell. And let's play with this drive. All right, and some compression. 2-to-1 ratio. And oh, there's no makeup gain on here. Okay. See how I'm now clipping? So I'm just going to bring this down to -3. See if that's still doing it. Cool. So that's just a speed run on the kick drum here. Let me mute it real quick, or disable this real quick to show you where we started with. Definitely an improvement, so let me bring these overheads back in. So that is a quick way to do a kick drum, and that was a pretty nasty one. There's a reason I ended up with the sample. So here's what we ended up with live, just with the recording we had. Not bad, but here is what we ended with by cheating. Because sometimes you just cheat. No bleed. Add that back in. Maybe a little too rock and roll for this song, but this is what we ended up with in the mix. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. Next time we'll move on to the snare. Thank you very much.